The Ontario College of Psychologists, which is the board that regulates the practice of psychology in Ontario and hypothetically protects the public interest, has levied a series of what are, in essence, lawsuits against me for unprofessional conduct pertaining primarily to my social media communication. And so they have decided in their wisdom that I am to be required to undertake a series of re-education lessons designed to ensure that I communicate in a manner they deem appropriate. And I have told them that there are no circumstances I can imagine under which I would be willing to do that. And the next step is to bring me before a public disciplinary hearing and then to suspend my clinical license. And so I'm making all of this public because I think people need to weigh in on whether I'm an alt-right, Nazi, harmful, bastion of intolerable political thought with a troll-like army of pathological followers, or whether the college itself is a corrupt nest of social justice vipers hell-bent on envy and revenge and using the tiny fraction of people who are complaining to put forward their own brand of personal pathology and vindictiveness. And, well, I'll make everything public except for that which I can't do on legal grounds and let everybody decide for themselves. That's the plan, because I might be wrong, and I guess if I am, I need to learn how. The regulatory boards that govern professional conduct in Canada, particularly in the US as well, and in the West more broadly, have become so corrupted by ideology that the professionals you depend on in moments of crisis for legal advice and medical advice and psychological counseling, some of which can be life and reputation saving, they can no longer be trusted because they're being required by the professional bodies to lie to you in the service of this warped, radical leftist ideology that's now become, what would you call it, mandatory for right speakers wherever they might exist. And so that's why you might want to listen. They listed the fact that I criticized Justin Trudeau on multiple occasions. Before I submit myself to this media training re-education, because I'm bound by the ethical standards of my profession, I'm not willing to go get educated unless there's evidence that the contents of the educational program are directly related to the practice of my profession, and that there's evidence that undertaking such re-education actually makes me a more competent therapist. Do you have any independent documentation that these experts that you have hired and foisted upon me have anything approximating genuine expertise? And do you have any evidence whatsoever that such training programs are effective? And of course, they said, we don't have to answer questions like that. And I asked them, I said, there's some evidence that I've done some good in the world. About 7 million people bought my first public book, and I have 15 million subscribers on the 3 main platforms we operate on social media. And lots of people seem to come to my lectures when I am out publicly speaking, saying that I've really helped them in their lives. And that's thousands or hundreds of thousands or possibly even millions of people. And so I think I can stack up a pretty good, plus all the students that I taught at Harvard and the University of Toronto, and all my clinical clients, who by and large were pretty damn happy to be working with me, and vice versa. It's like, how do you calculate the harm to benefit ratio? And what evidence do you have that I actually constitute a sufficient threat to the integrity of the profession that you're willing to bring the second harshest actions you have in your arsenal against me? And the answer to that was, we don't have to answer questions like that. And I had like 40 questions like that, none of which were answered. Their answer basically was, we can do whatever the hell we want. And we're telling you, you better go get re-educated, or you face a disciplinary hearing. That's the next step, is that I'd have to face a disciplinary hearing. And what I'm going to do for that, I do believe they videotaped that. And I'll take the videotape and put it on my YouTube channel, and people can decide for themselves which is exactly what I want to have happen in this situation. Like you and I talked about our strategy here, and I have been unbelievably angry about this. So it's been very hard for me to control my anger, and I know that's not right, and that my desire to seek vengeance is inappropriate, as is the desire in general to seek vengeance, right? But it's very difficult to read through these allegations and to face this waste of my time and the stress it puts on us, to me and your mother and our whole family, without being outraged at this, and a lot of the battle for the last couple of weeks has just been to keep my temper under control. But you and I, we talked through this, and I talked through it with your mom and with Julian, about the fact that our attitude in general has been just to tell everybody what's going on as clearly as we possibly can. And I want to make it all public. I'm preparing a document today redacting all the names of the complainants, which I have been provided with by the college, by the way. I'm going to redact all their names and identifying information.
That's also ridiculous. This just isn't set up very well. Like, you'd think that if you were a problematic psychologist, you shouldn't be provided with the people's names that complained about you. That doesn't seem smart.
Yeah, well, I don't know what to make of that. And it's also problematic that people can levy accusations that bring down the heavy hand of a bureaucratic organization and bear absolutely no personal responsibility to that. Professionals weren't afraid of their regulatory bodies, because generally the only people who complained were either people who were clearly disturbed, in some fundamental sense, or people who had a legitimate reason to believe that they had suffered harm as a consequence of unprofessional behavior on the part of a lawyer or teacher or physician or psychologist. And the boards themselves have become staffed pretty much uniformly with social justice oriented, politically correct, faux compassionate, narcissistic commissars, and they do everything they can to make life miserable for anyone who doesn't share their political opinions. I mean, it's actually almost beyond comprehension to me that I'm engaged in a battle in my country of Canada where I have to defend my right to practice my profession as a licensed psychologist. And I would say, especially with my educational pedigree, I mean, Jesus, I was a professor at Harvard and the University of Toronto. I trained clinical psychologists, and the fact that I have to defend my right to conduct my own profession because I retweeted a tweet from the official leader of Canada's Conservative opposition party and criticized Justin Trudeau and have made, at least upon occasion, conservative political pronouncements. The fact that that has now made me subject to heavy-handed punishment and investigation by a government-sponsored regulatory board it's absolutely incomprehensible. And so that's also, I would say, difficult emotionally, because I just can't believe it's happening.